problems again. Hopefully, we'll be able to resolve it shortly. Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and all counsel. Mr. Martinez, you may continue. The last objection was sustained.
Ma'am, at some point, you do remember that you had the knife in your hand, correct?
I don't remember that part.
Do you remember at some point indicating to this jury that you dropped the knife? Do you remember saying that?
I do remember that, yes.
So if you dropped the knife, where did you drop it from, if not your hand?
Presumably my hand, I just don't remember gripping it.
Did I ask you whether or not you had gripped it?
That's what I took it as.
No, did I ask you whether or not you were gripping the knife, ma'am?
You didn't use those words specifically.
Right, I asked you whether or not the knife was in your hand. Do you remember that?
I don't remember you wording it that way.
Did you drop the knife?
Yes, I did.
Did you tell that to the jury?
Yes, I did.
Did you tell them that you screamed, right?
Yes, I did.
So then the knife was in your hand, right?
Yes, it was.
And this issue about gripping has nothing to do with it, does it?
I would think it would.
Do you think how strongly you were gripping it is important to this case?
I wasn't talking about the strength of the grip, just
Well,
that
no,
I gripped
I'm
it.
asking you that just now. That was the question.
Will you repeat that?
Do you think that how strongly you were gripping it is important to this case?
Objection, argumentative, relevance.
Overruled.
I wouldn't know.
Well, you're the one that brought this up about not gripping it. You seem to think that's important. Why do you think that's important?
Objection, argumentative.
You did have the knife in your hand, right?
Yes.
It was after the shooting, according to you, right?
Yes.
And you previously had seen that knife in the bedroom, right?
I don't recall. I think it was at one point, but I know it was definitely in the bathroom, but it may have gone to the bedroom. I'm not sure.
And you did drop the knife, right?
Yes, I did.
And after dropping the knife, you took it with you, right?
Objection, mischaracterized as a testimony, not argumentative.
Overruled.
Took it where?
I don't know. I'm asking you. Where did you take it?
I have no idea.
You don't remember. You said you dropped the knife, right?
Yes, I remember that.
When the jury asked the question about items, you indicated that you took certain items. Do you remember saying that?
Yes,
And you said the gun, right?
I remember the gun.
Right? And a number of other items that you took, right?
Just the items I remember are
So, what is your question?
Overruled.
the items I remember are my luggage, of course, and I remember the rope and I remember the gun. I don't remember having the knife at any point after I was a little more lucid.
Ma'am, you were wearing shoes that day when you got to Mr. Alexander's house, right?
When I arrived, yes.
When we took a look at, if we take a look at Exhibit 162, you're wearing socks, right?
Yes.
So you took your shoes too, didn't you?
I was without my shoes when I
Pardon?
realized what was going on in the car. I didn't have my shoes anymore.
So you're saying that you left your shoes behind. Is that what you're saying?
I left them somewhere. and
No,
they
I'm
didn't
not
come with
asking
me.
you if you left them somewhere. Are you saying that you left your shoes behind at Mr. Alexander's home?
Objection, calls for speculation, argumentative.
Overruled.
I don't remember what happened to my shoes. I just know that I didn't have shoes when I realized that I didn't have shoes.
You also took your socks off before you left the house, didn't you?
I don't remember.
Well, do you remember indicating that you were barefoot when you were driving?
Yes.
So you must have taken your socks off in the house, right?
Could have been anywhere.
Calls for speculation.
Overruled.
It could have been anywhere, not necessarily the house.
The knife, where, you said you heard a sound, right? When you dropped it, right?
Yes, I heard it cling on the tile.
And so you're saying now, the way you're saying it is that you dropped it in the bathroom, right?
I believe it was the bathroom, yes.
And you're saying that you believe it was in the bathroom because there was a sound of tile, correct?
That's correct.
And you have no recollection whatsoever about picking it up afterwards, do you? According to you, right?
No, I screamed and I don't remember anything after.
You just remember the scream and then away you went, right?
Yeah, I guess my memory.
The way she went.
Sustained.
You remember screaming, right?
Yes, I do.
And you remember nothing else, right?
Nothing immediately after that. That's correct.
Actually, it was for many hours, right?
Yes, that's right.
The next thing that you say that you remember is stopping on the side of the road, right?
Yes.
You don't remember gassing up or anything, right? You told the jurors you don't remember anything else, right?
There's some vague memories,
I
but
understand that, but generally what you told to the jurors in response to the question was you don't remember anything, right?
Objection, argumentative. She just explained she had vague memories.
Overruled.
it wasn't that black and white, but in general, there's a huge gap there.
And you indicated that it was the side of the road where you finally sort of started to come out of whatever fog you were in, right?
Somewhat, yes.
And you don't know which way you were driving, right?
Objection beyond the scope of the question.
Overruled.
By that point, I didn't know which direction I was driving in.
And you indicated to the jurors that you were around or short of the Nevada border, by the side of the road in the desert, when you finally started to know what was going on, right?
I'm going to object again, Your Honor. Can we approach?
You may.
You told this jury about pulling off the side of the road, correct? And you indicated that you have very vague memories, or hardly any memories at all, from leaving the house until you get to this area outside of the desert, right?
That's right.
And this area is near the Arizona-Nevada border, right?
I don't know where I was.
Well, you got in your car and you drove after that, didn't you?
Yes.
And you drove towards Hoover Dam, right?
I don't know where I was driving toward, but I did eventually reach Hoover Dam.
Right. And how much time did it take you to get to Hoover Dam from where you cleaned up?
Objection calls for speculation. She's already said she doesn't remember.
Overruled. You may answer.
Well, I remember driving in the sun for a little ways. The sun was in my eyes, but by the time I reached the dam, it was dark, so I don't know how long it took.
I'm not asking you about driving into the sun. I'm asking you about the time that you stopped by the side of the road. You told the jury that you did, remember?
Yes, I
You
did.
got rid of the gun, you told them, right?
Yes,
You got rid of the clothing, right?
I believe I did.
Yeah, that's what you told them though, right?
Yes,
And so at that point, ma'am, when you were at that road, you continued driving to a point that you got to Hoover Dam, right?
yes, and I need to correct my last answer. I don't remember what I did with the clothes.
Well, all right, so, but you did get rid of the gun. If you didn't get rid of the clothing, you do remember telling us that you got rid of the gun, right?
I do remember that.
And then you did continue driving on and you came to Hoover Dam, right?
Yes,
And then you continued driving, right?
yes,
Ma'am, and before that, from the time you left the house until you got to the side of the road, you did indicate that maybe you were driving into the sun, is what you told us, right?
at one point, yes, I think it was.
And during this trip, between the time that you didn't know what was going on, you left the house, until you got to the side of the road, you put gas in the car, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
So this fog had lifted enough so that as you're driving along, you do know what's going on, right?
I don't know what you mean, because there
Well,
might
you
have
know
been
that
some
the car needs
sense.
gasoline, right?
If it needed gas, I would have put gas in it.
Well, no, you just told me, ma'am, just now that you did put gas in the car, didn't you?
I don't have specific memory of gassing up, but if it needed the gas, then I would have put the gas in it.
Ma'am, didn't you just tell me right now that we talked about the fog, you talked about certain images, stopping by the side of the road, and then I asked you, isn't it true that in between there, you put gas in the car and you said yes?
I did say that.
And so you were cognizant enough while you were driving through this fog that you were able to look at a gas gauge, weren't you?
Presumably.
Well, no, not presumably. Why would you be putting gas in the car if it didn't need it, right?
That's correct.
And you used the gas cans, didn't you?
I don't remember.
You don't remember, you do remember putting gas, but you don't remember what the method of delivery was?
I don't remember putting gas. I'm presuming I did, just like I'm presuming everything else about June 4th that we know are facts. I just don't have memory of those things.
You're presuming that you did, but that's not what you just told us, is it?
I didn't say that specifically.
No, you didn't. You said, yes, I did put gas in the car, right?
Right?
And when you got to, and it came from the gas cans, didn't it?
I don't-
Objection, argumentative, asked and answered. Jodi
Sustained.
said she didn't know.
Sustained.
The items that you told us that you got rid of, or that you told the jury, included the gun, right?
Correct.
You also don't know what happened to the clothing, right?
That's right.
And if we go back to the scene, one of the things that we know and that we talked about to the jury about was this camera. Do you remember that?
Yes.
You did leave the camera behind, right?
Yes.
But there were deleted images, right?
Yes.
And one of the deleted images that was on there was Exhibit 162, right?
Yes.
You did take the rope, right?
Yes.
And the knife, you said that you heard it clank, so you believe that that was dropped in the bathroom, right?
That's right.
Ma'am, everything that we've talked about that has anything to do with the crime, which is what we've talked about, you somehow, in this fog of yours, manipulated, didn't you?
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained.
Well, you did touch the camera, right? In this fog, right?
I believe I did.
Right, because of where it was found, right? And you did delete the images, didn't you?
Objection, mischaracterizes the testimony.
Overruled.
Maybe some or all, I don't remember.
You deleted photographs, how about that?
I probably
Objection, asked and answered.
Overruled.
did, but I don't remember.
I'm not asking you if you remember, I'm asking you whether or not you deleted them, yes or no?
Then the
Objection,
answer,
if she doesn't remember, she can't answer the question despite his insistence.
Rephrase the question.
Ma'am, I'm not asking you whether you remember, I'm asking you whether or not, based on what you know about this case, you deleted certain photographs, didn't you?
Objection, Your Honor, again, lack of foundation, she has memory.
Overruled. You may answer.
I guess I did.
You guess you did, meaning you believe somebody else may have done it, right?
That doesn't mean that.
Argumentative.
Overruled.
Do you believe somebody else did it?
No.
Also, in addition to that, this knife that inflicted these injuries, you believe that you dropped it, right?
Yes.
And you also believe that you moved it, though, right?
I believe I did.
Yeah, you've indicated to other people that you moved it, right?
I indicated that I believed I did.
Well, you've said that you moved that item too, didn't you say? You didn't say believe, you said I moved it.
I don't think I said that.
You tested, with regard to this particular issue, did you talk to any individuals that were assisting in your case? For example, a psychologist or somebody with a master's a social worker?
Yes,
And you indicated certain things to them, right?
that's right.
And you indicated that,
Objection, this is beyond the scope of questions.
Roach, please.
Sustained.
you also indicated that to the jury that you went to Utah, didn't you?
Yes,
And you met with an individual by the name of Brian Burns, right?
yes.
Where did you fill up with gas?
I don't remember.
Do you remember whether or not you used a credit card or debit card?
I don't remember.
One of the things that you do remember, though, is that you used a gun, right?
On June 4th, yes.
Yes, you did use a gun, didn't you? And it was in your hands, right?
Yes,
One of the other things that you indicated as part of your statement to the jury was that it was in a holster. Do you remember saying that?
I remember saying at one point it was in a holster.
All right. You also indicated it was in a box at another time, didn't you?
I don't remember indicating that.
Well, then you indicated when you were being asked the questions that maybe it wasn't in a holster. Do you remember saying that?
I remember saying maybe it was, maybe it wasn't on June 4th. I don't recall.
Well, initially you did say that it was in a holster, didn't you?
It was at one point.
Right. So, as you sit here today and you think about it, which is it? Was it in a holster or was it in a box?
Well, at that moment, I didn't have time to sit and examine it. I just grabbed it. I reached up. I didn't even get that high. I just reached my arm up and grabbed it.
I understand that you just reached up and grabbed it. I want to know whether or not it was in a holster or not.
I can't tell you that.
Even though you did indicate previously that you thought it was in a holster. Right?
Objection, mischaracterizes her testimony and argumentative. He can't testify for her and argue against him.
Restate your question.
You did tell us before that the gun was in a holster, didn't you?
At one point, it was in a holster, and it was also not in a holster. So I saw it at a few occasions. One point it was in a holster,
Ma'am,
one point it wasn't.
I'm not asking you to give me this long answer. I'm asking you, isn't it true that you told us in response to a question that the gun was in a holster when you grabbed it? Do you remember saying that?
Objection, argumentative. Ask and answer mischaracterizes her testimony.
Overruled. You may answer.
I remember saying that I don't recall if it was in the holster when I grabbed it.
That's what you remember now, right?
That's what I remember saying, yes.
Right. And again, are you having any memory problems today?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, who else would be aware of you having any memory problems other than you?
Objection, argumentative.
Well, you seem to imply that I am, so maybe
I'm
you are.
not implying anything. I want you to tell me whether or not you're having any memory problems right now.
Well, I've already answered that. I said not that I'm aware of.
So when not that I'm aware of means no to you, is that what we're saying? If we're gonna,
Objection, ask and answer argumentative.
The other thing is that you indicated that you, at some point, you bought a 9mm handgun after you killed Mr. Alexander, right?
Yes,
You remember that question by the jury, right?
yes,
And one of the things that you indicated with regard to that 9mm handgun was that you bought it for personal reasons, right?
that's correct.
Personal safety reasons, right?
Yes,
And the reason that you were cautious or worried about your safety was because you were going to go on a camping trip, right?
that was just one of the reasons.
No, but that's what you told us though, right? That's,
Overruled.
I told you that was one of the reasons.
and that was the main reason. And do you remember that you also told them that this trip that you were going to go on required you to have a handgun because it was going to only be guys? Do you remember telling us that?
No, it was not required. It was just something that made me feel safer.
Ma'am, do you remember saying that you wanted to take the gun, the 9mm, on this camping trip because it was only guys? Do you remember saying that?
Yes, that I knew of. Only guys were going so
Well-
far. We were still organizing the trip.
That you knew of. We're not asking you to tell us anything about what anybody else knows. We're asking you to tell us what you know of. You don't have to add that on there. Do you understand that?
Okay.
Objection argumentative. You can answer the questions he
Sustained.
poses.
Ma'am, didn't you tell us that you bought the gun in anticipation of a camping trip where there were only going to be men, right?
Objection, asked and answered. I think we're on 3 times on this one now.
Overruled. Answer the question.
I remember indicating that that was one of the reasons I purchased a handgun.
And you also said that when you were on this camping trip, that you never know what may happen and you just wanted to be cautious, right?
That, but I never went on the camping trip.
I'm not asking you if you went on the camping trip.
You phrased it that way.
Ma'am, isn't it true that I asked you about whether or not you said you never know what may happen and you have to be cautious? You used the word cautious, right?
Yes,
And you were worried about going on a camping trip with a bunch of guys and what they might do because according to you, they drink beer or whatever it is that they drink. Do you remember saying that?
yeah, I just wanted to be careful.
Yeah. You really didn't need to go on this camping trip at all, did you?
No,
Objection argumentative. Beyond the scope.
Overruled.
And this gun that you were buying and this trip that was involved, you also told us that there were ladies that were going also, right?
we were trying to organize it, so that was a possibility, but so far I was the only lady on board with the trip.
And even though you said that you had this, you told the jury that you had this problem or this experience with Mr. Alexander, that's the reason that you wanted to take the gun, right?
Objection, mischaracterizes your testimony.
Sustained.
The fact that you had been involved with Mr. Alexander and the issue involving Mr. Alexander, that was one of the reasons why you were cautious, right?
Objection, some mischaracterizes his testimony. It's the same exact question.
Approach, please.
You remember telling us that part of the reason that you were cautious was because you had previous bad experiences with Mr. Alexander and physical violence.
Yes, that was one of the reasons.
And one of the other things that you told us was that you've read the Book of Mormon, right?
Yes,
And you told us that you've read it from cover to cover, right?
yes,
And in fact, this interest in the Book of Mormon, you also told us, started back in, September of 2006, correct?
correct. And I need to correct my last answer. I didn't read it cover to cover. I just read to the end of the Book of Mormon, but they have a huge index in the back that I didn't read. Sorry.
But you're saying that you read the content of it, right?
Of the book, yes.
And this interest started back in September of 2006, right?
Yes,
And you indicated that the way you phrased it was that, well, you tried to follow the mandates in the Book of Mormon, right?
I don't know that I indicated that way, but yeah, that would have been a goal of mine.
Sure, you told us the thing about coffee. You know, that was one of the things that the religion indicated was something that shouldn't be engaged in, right?
That's correct. It's not in the
And
Book
you
of
tried,
Mormon.
I guess the point is you try to be a good Mormon, right?
Overruled.
I did my best to appear that way.
And one of the things that you also told us, or told the jury, was that, well, even though you did your best, you followed guidance from certain people, right?
That's correct.
One of the people that you followed guidance from was Mr. Alexander, right?
Yes,
And that was, according to you, with regard to the issue of sex, right?
yes,
Chastity was the term that was used, right?
yes,
And based on what he told you, you acted in conformity, or you acted in a certain way, right?
yes,
But you, of course, though, independently read the Book of Mormon, right?
that's correct.
And the Book of Mormon, though, does talk about lying, doesn't it?
Yes,
And in fact, Nephi 9:34, are you familiar with that?
not off the top of my head, no.
Well, let me mark something and see if this is something that you come across.
Yes.
Ma'am, you remember the jurors asking you about this issue involving the Book of Mormon, right?
Yes,
And do you remember saying that you've read the book from beginning to end, right?
that's correct.
And this Book of Mormon, you've said, has guided your life, right?
I didn't say that.
Well, didn't you say that as part of the Book of Mormon, you don't engage in drinking caffeine anymore, right?
No, I said that that wasn't part of the Book of Mormon.
That was what? I
that-
can't hear you.
I said that was not part of the Book of Mormon. It's doctrine that came out later.
You're talking about the Doctrine and Covenants, right?
It's not, coffee isn't specified in Doctrine and Covenants, but the word of wisdom was clarified more in the 20th century, I think it was, and that's when coffee came into that verbiage.
And this is all intertwined with the Mormon faith, right?
It is,
And this is the faith that you try to follow, right?
yes,
And that's what you told the jury, right?
yes,
It includes the Pearl of Great Price, right? Doesn't it include that?
it does.
These are part of the books involved in the Mormon faith, right?
Yeah, it's all part of the canon.
Right, and you've read them, right?
Yes,
And you've attempted to incorporate them in your life, right?
yes,
And this is at least part of the problem that you had involving the vow of chastity, right?
I would say that, yes.
But these books that we've talked about, specifically the Book of Mormon, Nephi 9:34, also talks about other issues, doesn't it? Lying.
Overruled.
It does talk about lying, doesn't it?
You said Nephi?
Nephi, right, 9:34.
That's First Nephi?
Yes, Nephi 9:34. Why don't you take a look at Exhibit 524 and see if you recognize it.
This is Second Nephi.
Pardon?
This is Second Nephi. Yes,
It does talk about lying, right?
yes,
And it lays it out in no uncertain terms, right?
yes.
Okay, why don't you tell us, based on looking at that, what the mandate is involving lying?
That more or less you're condemned to hell.
For lying, right?
Yes,
Okay, let me have that back. So even though you tell us that you follow the Book of Mormon, really, and that's what created a problem for you and Mr. Alexander, you really don't follow the Book of Mormon when you told that to the jury. You really don't follow it, do you?
Overruled.
well, you're talking about what time period?
Well, I'm talking about your life, ma'am. This is what we're talking about. Isn't it true that you told the jury that this book sort of governs the way you style your life, right?
I didn't say that.
No, it isn't, doesn't govern your life? Isn't that what we just talked about?
Objection, mischaracterizes your testimony.
Overruled. You may.
Can you repeat that?
Doesn't the book govern your life? Don't you run your life according to what it lays out?
Well, it's not a yes or no question. I mean, answer, so if you'd let me,
I'm asking you whether or not you use this as a guide. Isn't that what you told us in your everyday life? When the jurors asked the question, you said, yeah, that's what I use. And you told us that you've read it from cover to cover, right?
I wasn't asked that way and I didn't answer that way.
You did tell us that you read it cover to cover, didn't you?
Yes,
Chapter at a time, right?
yes.
That in it, it didn't have anything specific about chastity, right?
The word chastity may be in there, but it wasn't
Not
broken down
specific.
specifically.
There weren't anything specific that you could sort of hang on to guide your life, right?
Not in that book alone.
Right.
That's correct.
And you're implying there are other books, right?
There are other books.
And there are other books that you read, right?
In a different, afterward, yes, there is another book that I read.
I didn't get the first part. What did you say?
For example, the other books would be like the one you read to Desiree Freeman. That's a book that I discovered in 2009.
So there are other materials out there, right?
Yes.
And you said that you've read those, right?
I believe I've read the bulk of them. I don't know if I've read them all cover to
But
cover.
if we're just going to, because of the time restriction that you put on it, let's just restrict ourselves to the Book of Mormon and back in 2006, 2007, 2008. As part of your indoctrination and to become baptized, you're required to know about these things, right?
Yeah, I think you're quizzed on them before you're baptized.
Well, sure, and one of the things is you don't lie, right?
I don't remember if that was one of the questions for baptism.
Well, no, I'm not asking if that's one of the questions in baptism. One of the questions in baptism is if you're going to follow the tenets of the Book of Mormon, right?
Objection, this is way beyond the scope of the jury questions.
Sustained.
So when it's to your convenience, ma'am, for example, the vow of chastity, then you say, this isn't specific enough. But when it comes to something like lying, then it doesn't apply to you. Isn't that what we're looking at?
Do you want to answer the question?
Objection, argumentative, mischaracterizes her testimony.
Approach, please.
Ma'am, one of the other things that you indicated to us was that there was a fight between you and Mr. Alexander on the eve of the Havasupai trip. Do you remember telling us that?
Yeah, the morning of, yes.
The morning, sure. And the way that that fight started, actually, though, was because Mr. Freeman was trying to lighten the load that you were attempting to carry, right?
I don't think that was part of the fight.
Well, that's how this got started, didn't it?
That's how Mr. Freeman interpreted it, because he wasn't in the bathroom when the fight actually exploded.
So you're saying that Mr. Freeman had absolutely nothing to do with the fight that took place between you and Mr. Alexander in the bathroom that morning? Nothing to do with it?
I would say that.
Pardon?
Well, maybe indirectly, but not the subject matter. certainly.
No, you said it didn't have anything to do with it. So for example, the fact that it started downstairs and you started to cry and went to the bathroom had nothing to do with the fact that Mr. Alexander then went behind you. Had nothing to do with it.
I didn't cry
Oh,
downstairs.
so you were happy downstairs then, right?
I didn't say that either, no.
You were unhappy downstairs then.
I was a little, discombobulated because all my stuff was gone out of my backpack, and then I thought, where is it? And so they said, it's over here, and I said, oh, okay. So I just took it upstairs because I needed to brush my teeth.
So discombobulated, is that the same thing as confused?
Somewhat, yeah.
Is that the same as being in a fog?
Well, I just woken up, so maybe I was a little bit.
And is that the same thing as having memory issues? Or is that something different?
That's different.
Overruled.
I would classify that as different.
Okay, so you may have been a little confused at that point, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I was confused at first.
And then you're saying that Mr. Alexander came upstairs and there was a fight that ensued, right?
That's correct.
Totally unrelated to this issue involving the backpack, right?
Unrelated, the subject matter of the fight was unrelated.
It was unrelated at all. The subject matter, unrelated means unrelated in terms of subject matter, space, and time. Had nothing to do with the argument that was downstairs, right?
There was no argument downstairs, but I wasn't happy or thrilled. I think I might have appeared irritated, but I didn't say anything. I just took the backpack and went upstairs. So it could have precipitated his posture of how he approached me in the bathroom, but he got really mad when he saw me taking everything out because I was looking for my toothbrush.
So there was an argument downstairs is what you said, right?
I don't think any angry words were exchanged. I wouldn't call it an argument.
Well, ma'am, didn't you just say that 30 seconds ago that there was an argument downstairs? You just said that.
I said the opposite 30 seconds ago.
Could you read back that portion, please? Her response.
saying that Mr. Alexander came upstairs and there was a fight that ensued, right? Answer, that's correct.
I believe so.
Your Honor, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the court.
Could you read it again, please?
And then you're saying that Mr. Alexander came upstairs and there was a fight that ensued, right? Answer, that's correct. Before that.
It was before that, correct. A response.
I was a little discombobulated because all my stuff was down out of my backpack. I said, where is it? They said, it's over here. I said, okay, so I took it upstairs because I needed to brush my teeth.
How about after that,
After that.
where the word argument was used by her? If in fact she did.
It was unrelated at all. Unrelated means unrelated in terms of subject matter, space, and time. It had nothing to do with the argument that was downstairs, right? Answer, was that argument downstairs?
Well, we'll go on. So, you're saying there was no argument downstairs. I'll take that. You'll say that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't classify it as an argument. It was just a discussion so I could figure out where my stuff went.
And in terms of being downstairs, wasn't it actually Mr. Freeman that was going through your backpack, right?
It was, I don't know, it was already repacked by the time I woke up.
It was what?
It had already been repacked by the time I woke up.
So, you were here when he testified, right?
Yes,
So, you know what he said, right? I'm not asking you to tell me what he said, but you know what he said, right?
I have a general recollection of what he said.
But you were here though, correct?
Yes,
And so you go back upstairs, right? And you're saying that that's when the argument really started, right?
yes,
And the reason that that was a sort of a changing point in the relationship for you was because Mr. Alexander said something to you, right?
yes,
And the words, according to you, that he said were, "fuck you," right?
yes,
And you said, well, I couldn't see that individual being the father of my children, right? Anybody who could use that language, right?
it was hard to envision that from that
Sure.
point on.
That's what you said, right?
Yes,
But you use those words too, don't you?
I have, yes, many times.
So, for example, when we were listening to the tape back on May 10th of 2008, that's the word that you used in that conversation, didn't you?
Right,
Objection, Your Honor, to be on the scope of your question.
Sustained.
You claim that you were offended by the word "fuck you," right?
By the-
Object to still be on the scope of the jury question.
Approach, please.
So, ma'am, it's true, though, that you would use that word yourself, right?
yes,
Objection.
Right?
yeah, I've used it.
And in fact, you used it back on May 10th of 2008, right?
Yes, I did.
The other thing, ma'am, is that we know is that with regard to this issue of chastity, you said that you took your guidance from Mr. Alexander, right?
The specifics, yes.
Yes, sure. That's actually not true, is it?
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained.
Ma'am, isn't it true that you knew it was wrong and you said, I don't care, even if it's wrong involving the sex, you're going to do it anyway?
At one point regarding when we would go all the way with vaginal sex, it reached a point where we did say that, yes.
No, you said it, right? Not we. I'm not asking about what Mr. Alexander said. I'm asking, isn't it true that you said, even though you know it's wrong, not irrespective of what Mr. Alexander said, even though you know it's wrong, you said, I'm still going to do it anyway.
Objection, comment, question.
Overruled.
I think yeah, something about if it's wrong, I don't want to be right. I think I used that
Right.
verbiage.
So when you keep telling us that Mr. Alexander was your person who actually taught you and that the reason you were doing doing this stuff was because he was the one that was telling you, you knew it was wrong independent of that, didn't you?
That we were going all the way, yes, I knew that was
Well,
wrong.
no, you knew, right, and you said, don't want to be right, right?
Yeah, I did eventually say that.
One of the other things that we know, ma'am, is that you claim that, well, you were asked by the jury about your failure to call 911. Do you remember answering that question?
That's correct.
And you were asked about that, and you said, well, it relates back to an experience that I had with Bobby Juarez. Do you remember telling us that?
Yeah, it did in part. I remember saying that.
Yeah, and you said that there was, at a point in your relationship with Mr. Juarez, there was a point when apparently there was a physical altercation between you and Mr. Juarez, right?
Yes,
And during this physical altercation, you got on the telephone and actually dialed 911, right? According to you.
yes,
And you dialed 911, and according to you, the police called back, right?
yes, after he hung up the phone.
Right. So he hung up the phone, but the police called back, right?
Yeah, I think it was the 911 operator.
Well, you're saying I think now, but previously you were certain that he called 911. Do you remember telling us
I
that?
called 911.
Okay, you called 911. So you were certain you called 911, right?
Pretty certain. I mean, it was chaotic, but I think I got 911.
Well, I know that you're saying it's chaotic now, but do you remember in response to the juror's question that you said, I called 911? Do you remember saying that?
Correct.
You didn't equivocate, did you?
I'm sorry?
You did not equivocate or show uncertainty when you answered that, did you?
I did not, that I
And so
recall.
you called 911 and Mr. Juarez hung up the phone according to you, right?
Yes.
And then there was a return call from the police department, right?
I don't know who returned the call. He just said, shut up, they're going to call back.
Well, okay, somebody called back, right?
Yes,
And you heard him talk about this issue involving you and him, right?
Objection, mischaracterizes her testimony.
Overruled.
he didn't talk about our issues.
Well, you said he convinced whoever was on the other end of the line that everything was all right. Do you remember saying that?
Yes.
And that as a result of that, the police didn't come out there, right?
That's correct.
And so you said, well, because of that, that's the reason I didn't call the police when Mr. Alexander, that you claim abused you, right?
No, that's not what I said.
Well, you did say that in response to the question by the jurors. You were asked, why didn't you call 911, right?
Yes,
And you said, well, I had this situation with Mr. Juarez. Do you remember saying that?
yes,
And so you're saying that just because of this situation that happened many years ago, that's the reason why you didn't call 911 when Mr. Alexander abused you, right?
no, that might have been a small reason, but I gave a bigger reason for not calling 911.
But that was part of the reason that you told us about, right? You did connect the two together, didn't you?
The question connected the two, so I answered it accordingly.
I'm not asking about the question. You responded to the question and you connected the two together, didn't you?
Objection, ask and answer, mischaracterizes her testimony.
Overruled.
No, the question connected the two, and I responded to the question.
Okay, so in this case, you're saying that your response was the fault of the question, not your response.
Objection, argumentative.
Well, did you or did you not connect the two in response to whatever the question was?
Objection, ask and answer.
Overruled.
If the question had mentioned both calls, or the time I called Bobby, but I didn't with Travis, then that's the reason I answered that way.
Ma'am, I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you whether or not you did tell us the story about Bobby Juarez and the 911 call.
Objection, ask and answer.
Overruled.
Yeah,
And that was in part, that discussion was in part involving Mr. Alexander and the claimed physical abuse, right?
Objection mischaracterizes her testimony. She's repeatedly said it's related to the question.
Overruled. You may answer the question.
will you repeat it, please? I'm sorry.
Isn't it related, isn't it true that you told us that part of the reason you didn't call 911 was because of this prior experience with Mr. Juarez?
That was part of the reason.
But nothing really stopped you from calling 911, right?
Objection argumentative.
Rephrase.
Did anything stop you from calling 911?
Objection argumentative.
Overruled.
Well, in the heat of the moment, yeah, Travis did, but
Pardon?
afterward, in the heat of the moment, Travis did, but afterward, I could have.
Sure you could have, right?
Yes,
And you didn't though, right?
that's correct.
You could have taken photographs, right?
Yes,
In fact, you took photographs of the injury to your finger that you suffered, according to you, at Casa Ramos, right?
yes, I did.
And you told us that you suffered this injury. Is it breaking a margarita glass or is it against an item? Which of the two is it?
I jammed it against a metal edge as I was putting margarita glasses away.
So it's all related, okay. And so you could have taken, you remember leaving in April of 2008 to go home, right?
Yes.
Moving, do you remember that?
Yes.
And
Objection beyond the scope of the jury questions.
do you remember telling the jury that you moved back to Wairika in April of 2008?
Yes.
They asked you about that, right?
I don't remember if that was one of the questions, but that's what I said.
And do you also remember that you told the jury in response to one of their questions involving the issue involving the injury to your neck? Do you remember talking to them about that?
Yes,
And this issue involving the injury to your neck, you could have taken pictures of that, right?
yes,
In fact, you could have taken those pictures yourself, right?
yes,
And because, in fact, you did it as late as June 3rd of 2008. You actually took pictures of your neck, right?
my neck.
Yes,
June 2008, I guess.
June 3rd, 2008.
Oh, yes, I did.
And in fact, you were in a car when you took those photographs, right?
Yes.
Let me show them to you.
Objection beyond the scope of the question.
Approach, please.
Yes.
But you didn't do that, right?
No, I was ashamed of those.
Ma'am, one of the things that you told us was that during the attack, you actually went inside the closet, right?
When I was trying to run away from his attack, yes.
You did go in the closet, right?
Yes.
And that you went in and you shut the door, right?
Yes.
And when you shut the door, one of the things that you did was that you went up to get the gun, right?
Yes.
Do you remember telling this detective, Flores, that Mr. Alexander did not have a gun?
Yes, I do.
Objection beyond the scope of the question.
Overruled.
You did tell him that, right?
I did.
That was a lie, is that what you're saying now?
Yes.
But that was on June 10th of 2008, wasn't it?
Yes.
That was one day after the police found the body, right?
Yes.
That call was initiated by you, right?
Yes.
The detective wasn't interviewing you per se. In other words, he didn't go to you and try to use his technique on you or anything, right?
Objection calls for speculations beyond the scope of the jury question.
Overruled.
I assumed he was, per an attorney I consulted with.
But if you assumed he was, you were aware of what was going on and you weren't going to give him anything, right?
I didn't want to tell him about his gun. I remember my heart started racing when he asked about it.
So you say that on June 10th, you did say that the victim did not have a gun, right?
Yes, I did.
Let's take a look at exhibits numbers. Let's start with number 70. You say that you're about, what, 5'5½", right?
5'5½" or 5'6", somewhere
Okay.
between there.
And you say that standing on the ground there, you can reach all the way to the top of that shelf, right?
Not standing on the ground. I stand about eye level to the picture of his dad.
I did not hear what you had to say, so eye level is where?
Where the photograph is. About that.
Where the what?
Where the photograph is?
Up here?
Yes.
So you're saying that your eyes were straight across on that photograph, right?
Yes. I don't know if it's the top or the bottom, but it's about eye level with the photo.
Eye level means your eyes are right across from that photograph, right?
Somewhat like that, yes.
No. I would like a bit of certainty from you.
Well, I can't give you certainty unless I'm standing in the closet.
I'm not asking you to stand in the closet. I'm asking you about how tall you were, and you said, in this closet, if I stand here, my eyes are level with this photograph. That's what you said, right?
Objection argumentative.
Overruled.
That's what I remember because I've cleaned that area many times.
I understand that you cleaned it many times and that you remember, so you're saying yes, correct?
It's about that, yes.
Okay? And in order to clean up here, that would mean that if you are eye level to that, you didn't have to use anything to get up there, right?
To clean up there, I moved the seat that's in the middle of the closet to stand on.
Well, why would you do that, ma'am? If your eyes are level with this, that would mean that your head would be level with this,
Objection.
whatever that is up there, wouldn't it?
Objection, lack of foundation.
Overruled.
I don't know if it was quite that tall or if it actually reached it.
Well, and if you were eye level to this, you could raise your hand and touch the top, right, according to you?
Objection, mischaracterizes her testimony. She just said she uses this stool.
Overruled.
I could probably reach up there and touch the top.
You're right. You cleaned that many times, right?
Yes,
So you would know whether or not you could be able to reach the top of that, right?
that's correct.
And as you sit here today, you don't know how tall that is, though, right?
No, I'm not precisely certain.
But you said that the way that you were able to reach it is by reaching whether it's your left or right hand up this way, and you could touch the top, right?
Yes, but not for cleaning.
Pardon?
Yes,
I'm not saying for cleaning. I'm saying just you could reach the top, right?
correct. I could touch it.
And you didn't have to stand on your tippy toes to do that or anything else, right?
I don't remember about that. I may have, I may not have.
And you actually cleaned in this corner here, correct?
Yeah, the whole top shelf.
And that's where you found the gun, right?
That's where I found it, yes.
And that's the gun that you claim was unloaded, right?
Objection, mischaracterizes her testimony. She said she didn't know whether it was loaded or not.
Overruled. You may answer.
That's the gun that Travis claimed was unloaded.
Well, no. You don't have any other knowledge of that gun, according to you, other than what Mr. Alexander told you, right?
That's correct.
Objection, mischaracterizes the testimony.
Overruled.
So you believe that that gun was unloaded, right?
I believed him.
No, you believe that the gun was unloaded. I'm not asking whether or not you believed him. I'm asking whether or not you believe that gun was unloaded.
Objection, beyond the scope of questions.
Overruled.
Well, I believed him when he assured me that when I first found it, but he did end up loading it at one point.
What's that?
He loaded it at one point in early December.
Whether he loaded it, before, that's something you didn't tell us before, right?
I mentioned it. I didn't say that he loaded it in early December, but I said at one point it was unloaded, and then at one point he used it.
So you're saying now that he used this gun then, right?
When I say used, I don't mean if he fired it. I don't know if he fired it. I just know that he loaded it and took it with him to go do something.
Right. And this is something that we're hearing for the first time, right?
No, I mentioned it briefly. It just wasn't expounded upon.
Okay. And this gun that you say that you saw him load, even though you saw him load it, you believed on June 4th of 2008 was unloaded, right?
I didn't know. I didn't check it. So
I'm not, did I ask you if you checked it, ma'am?
Objection, she's answering the question, it's argumentative.
Sustained.
I'm asking for your state of mind. Did you believe or not believe that the gun was loaded? One way or the other. What did you believe?
Objection, ask and answer, she said she didn't know.
Overruled. You may answer.
I didn't stop to really think about whether it was loaded or not, so I don't know. I just, at the only time the gun came to my head, I grabbed it and pointed at him so that he would
Ma'am,
halt.
didn't you tell the jury when you were talking about the attack in response to one of their questions that you believed the gun was unloaded? Do you remember saying that? Yes or no?
I don't remember
That's all I'm
saying that.
asking, yes or no? Do you remember saying that?
I don't know.
Again, do you have a problem remembering what you just said a couple days ago?
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained.
And you say that when you cleaned, you would be able to reach that. Do you know how high that is?
No.
But the gun wasn't visible, right?
Wasn't what? Visible?
It wasn't visible if you were just walking in the closet, right?
That's correct. I mean, not to me, not at my height.
Well, it wasn't visible. We're talking to you, right? It wasn't visible, right?
That's correct.
And the gun was sort of tucked back there, right?
It was just in the corner, yes.
Which means it was further back than on the lip, right?
Yes, that's right.
Which would mean that you would have to reach a little bit further to get to it, right?
Correct.
And so in order for you to get to it, even though you say that you were eye level here and that you could touch the top of this, you would still have to have something to get to the top of that, right?
Yes.
And where is it that, did you use anything to get up there or not?
Yes, I did.
What did you step on?
I stepped briefly on the edge of the shelf, and I held on to the edge of the shelf with my other hand and grabbed the gun with the
All
free
right.
hand.
You said that you stepped on the shelf. Was it this shelf? Was it that shelf? Which shelf?
It was one of the shelves. It was one of the shelves that are on the right.
Well, would it be this shelf?
I probably needed a higher shelf to get up
So
there.
it would be this shelf then, right?
I don't remember if it was that one or the one above it, but it
It could have been
was
this
one
one
of
then,
those
right?
two. Yeah, it was one of those two.
So it was this one or this shelf here, correct?
Correct.
Ma'am, those shelves are resting shelves, aren't they?
Do you mean resting as in?
Well, don't they have, for example, you can even see it here. And I'll bring it in so that you can see what I'm talking about. See there are little holes there? You see that right there?
Yes.
And since you've been there lots of times, you know that those shelves have some little pegs that go in there, right? To hold the shelf, right?
I know that because I see it in the photograph.
Well, you cleaned those, right?
Yes.
And you can see that throughout this whole thing, that these are really nothing more than resting shelves with shelves that rest on 4 metal pegs, right?
Yes.
You're familiar with those kinds of shelves, aren't you?
Somewhat, yes.
Well, you've been around them before, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
And so you know, for example, let me just ask you, did you know that the rating on these shelves was 40 pounds? Did you know anything about that?
Objection, foundation.
Just ask.
This fact's not in evidence.
Sustained.
Do you know what the rating was for these shelves?
What do you mean by rating?
How much weight they were capable of taking?
No.
But you say that you have had experience with these kinds of shelves, right?
I think I've assembled things. If it's
Sure.
plywood, I don't know if it's solid wood or plywood.
And if you, for example, step on one of these shelves with any force, and when this was happening, you were afraid for your life, right?
Certainly.
And you weren't worried about the shelves at all, were you?
I wasn't thinking about the shelves.
No, you were worried about your life, right?
I was worried about his pursuit, yeah.
Well, his pursuit was only relevant or important because you were worried about your life, according to you, right?
Yes,
Mischaracterizes her testimony.
Overruled.
Right?
I was, yes.
And so, for example, if you're going in there, you're not thinking about making sure that everything stays clean, are you?
That's correct.
You're not going in there making sure that everything stays in order, are you?
That's right.
So, for example, if you need to step here or there, one of those two, and that's necessary, you're going to put your foot and get on up there, right?
Yeah, my foot just hit the ledge, the edge.
Sure. And you're saying that your foot just hit the edge of this shelf, right?
That's right.
It didn't go all the way into the shelving, right?
Right.
But in terms of the arrangement here, if you moved something or if you moved some shoes aside, you weren't worried about neatness, I guess is my point, when you were jumping on that shelf, were you?
Right. I wasn't even worried about moving things.
Right. Because, again, you were worried for your life, right?
Yes,
There's really nothing here that's out of order, wouldn't you agree?
I agree with that.
And you did say that you did step on the edge, and you were careful to tell me that you didn't put your foot all the way in, right?
No, I would have fallen backwards if I had done that, probably.
Sure. But actually, if you would have put your foot right there at the edge, ma'am, wouldn't that shelf, the way you describe it, if you just put it here on the lip, which is what you told us, wouldn't that shelf have tipped over?
Objection, argumentative, calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Well, ma'am, you told us you were familiar with these shelves, right?
Somewhat, yes.
Well, no, you told us that you put them together, right?
Not these ones specifically.
These types of shelves.
Yes,
You
I
told
have.
us that, right?
Yes,
You know that they rest on some metal pins, right?
I don't know about that.
Well, if you put them you just told us you put these kinds of shelves together, right?
Objection, foundation.
Overruled.
I've done that, yes.
Yeah. And so we talked about the fact that these shelves rest on pins, right?
Do you mean like where the little holes are?
You put
for
them
the
together,
pins?
sure.
Okay, I think if we're talking about
Right.
the same thing, then yes.
Objection, she did not say she put these shelves together.
Sustained.
You put shelves like these together, didn't you?
I've done that, yes. Not
And
of
you
that
know that
size.
these shelves rest on pins, right?
Objection, asked and answered. We've done this about 3 times now.
Sustained.
So you do know that if you attempt to put your foot here with any weight, and you are putting your body weight on this shelf when you go get the gun, aren't you?
Objection, argumentative, compound question, lack of foundation.
Overruled.
Yes, I did climb up there.
Right. And you're putting your weight on that shelf is my question.
Yeah, part of my weight,
Right.
certainly.
And you weighed about, what, 135 back then?
I think I weighed 120.
All right, you weighed 120. And when you put your foot up there, you then reached up with a hand, didn't you?
Yes.
And any idea which hand you reached up with?
Whichever hand wasn't holding the top shelf.
So in addition to that, you say that you put your foot on one of these two, reach up here, and then with the other hand, you're holding on to the other shelf, right?
Yeah, I just sort of jumped up there real quick and grabbed it and jumped down.
And all without disturbing anything, right?
Yeah, I didn't need to put my foot inside on the shelf.
Right, you put it on the ledge, right?
That's correct.
And you weren't worried about not putting your full weight on it, right?
I wasn't concerned about that.
Pardon?
I wasn't thinking about that.
No, because you were worried about what was coming up behind you, right?
Yes.
And then you reached up and you got the gun that was kind of in the back, right?
It was in the corner, yes.
And then you got the gun, right?
Yes.
And then you stepped down, right?
I might have stepped down or jumped down, I don't remember.
Okay, you came down to the ground, right?
Yes.
And then you came down to the ground, and my question to you, as previously you said, there was a holster. Was there a holster there now that we've gone over there? Yes or no?
I don't,
Objection, asked and answered.
Sustained.
And you then grab the gun, right?
yeah, I grabbed the gun.
You go into the bathroom, right?
Yes.
And you grab and turn and point it at Mr. Alexander, right?
I turned, yes.
And you told us previously that it was your belief at that point inside the bathroom that the gun was unloaded, right?
I wasn't thinking about it being loaded or unloaded, I just wanted him to stop.
Ma'am, I know you just wanted him, you want us to believe that, but didn't you testify to this jury in response to their question that you thought the gun was unloaded? Yes or no?
I'm sorry, there was a lot of people talking.
Isn't it true that you told this jury that when you stood there and you pointed that gun at Mr. Alexander, that you thought it was unloaded? You told them that in response to one of the questions, right?
Yeah, my understanding was that it was typically unloaded. It had been loaded at one time. I certainly wasn't thinking of shooting him. I just wanted him to stop.
Yes or no?
Okay.
Objection, she's already testified she didn't know whether it was loaded or not.
Overruled.
That I thought it was unloaded.
Yes or no?
I don't remember thinking, this gun is unloaded. I remember somehow thinking that I'm not going to shoot him, like I wasn't thinking that. I wasn't thinking it's loaded and I want to point it at him. I just wanted him to stop. I don't remember what I was thinking necessarily. It was just, it all happened very fast.
I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you whether or not in response to one of the jury questions, whether or not you indicated to them, the jury, as part of the question, that as you held your hand out, that you believed the gun was unloaded. That's all I'm asking.
Objection, ask and answer.
Overruled.
I don't remember the specific answer I gave on that. I just remember that I don't recall it being loaded, or I don't remember even thinking about whether it was loaded or not.
Then I guess would you have a quibble if I told you that that's what you said to them?
Objection, argumentative.
If it wasn't loaded, ma'am, and you told us before that Mr. Alexander told you it wasn't loaded, right?
He did.
You told us that,
He
right?
told me both, yes.
Yeah, you told that to the jury, right?
Yes.
And Mr. Alexander said it's not loaded, right?
He said it's not loaded, and then one day he loaded it, so he said it was loaded.
Ma'am, but you said, you didn't include this part about loading. You did say that he told you it was unloaded, right? He did tell you that, right?
Yeah, initially he assured me it was not loaded.
Right. And so you go with these words of Mr. Alexander telling you that he believed it was unloaded, and then you also take your belief that you think it's unloaded, based on what he told you, and you take this, run into this closet to get that. What were you going to do with the gun? Throw it at him?
Objection, mischaracterizes testimony and is argumentative.
Sustained.
Well, what were you going to do with the gun if it's unloaded, ma'am?
I testified that I pointed it at him.
I'm not asking you what you testified to.
She's answering the question.
Then she's being non-responsive, Judge.
All right. Counsel approach, please.
Ma'am, given all this predicate information that you told us about Mr. Alexander, telling you that the gun was unloaded, you believing it was unloaded, when you were getting that gun, what were you going to do with it if it's unloaded?
I was thinking of just pointing it at him because if I know personally that if a gun was pointed at me, my first instinct would be to stop. And that's what I wanted him to do.
But if he had already told you that it was unloaded, why would you believe that he was going to stop? If he had previously told you it was unloaded?
It was just a hope because that's my philosophy about if I had to look at the end of a barrel of a gun, I would stop. And I didn't have time to sit and rationalize whether or not he would care, whether it was unloaded or loaded or what. I didn't know. I just wanted him to stop.
So you grab this gun that he has told you is unloaded and you go into the bathroom, right?
That's right.
And you point that gun, right?
Yes.
You know what guns do, right?
Yes.
So if you thought it was unloaded, Why are you pointing it?
Because
Sustained.
Ma'am, we've talked about in the closet, but in the bathroom. What, in the bathroom specifically, what were you hoping to accomplish? Not in the closet, but in the bathroom. What were you hoping to accomplish as you extended your arms out with an unloaded gun?
Objection, ask and answer. There was never any testimony that she pointed the gun at him in the closet. He's trying to mischaracterize the testimony to ask the same question.
Sustained. Sustained.
The light in that closet, ma'am, it was off, wasn't it, when you went in there, right?
I don't remember.
And you had no problems, though, locating the gun, right?
I don't remember having any problems.
Even though you really hadn't seen it that often, right?
Yeah, it's not something I went and looked at often. That's
Right.
correct.
But you had no problem finding it, right?
That's correct.
So it wasn't like you were so excited or so in a fog that you had any problems finding it, right? That didn't affect you at that point, right?
I don't remember having any problems. I reached around for it, it was there, and I grabbed it.
And then he came after you inside into the bathroom, and then you pointed this. In your opinion, and your testimony is that you were just pointing the gun at him when he came at you, right?
Yes.
You would agree that it requires you to put your finger on the trigger and pull it for it to fire, right?
That's my understanding, yes.
Well, you were there, right?
Yes.
And so you fired the gun, you shot him in the head, and you killed him, right?
Objection, Your Honor. Mischaracterizes the evidence.
Overruled.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't have anything else.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take the afternoon recess at this time. Please be back in the designated area at 10 minutes after 3. Please remember the admonition, you are excused. Counsel, please approach.